After the British took control of Trinidad in 1797, something dark began to unfold. Thousands of Africans were enslaved, not just to pick cocoa, but to dig from the earth itself. In sweltering heat, they cleared thick forests, planted endless cocoa trees and toiled at the Pitch Lake in La Brea, one of the largest natural asphalt lakes in the world. Their hands extracted black pitch that built roads in Europe, while their lives were stripped of freedom. Whipped, starved, silenced, these men, women and children weren't just laborers, they were treated like tools. Cocoa was sweet for the colonizers, but for the enslaved, it tasted of pain. Even after slavery officially ended in 1834, freedom was delayed, replaced by a cruel apprenticeship system that lasted another 4 years. Only in 1838 were they finally free, but the land they built, the wealth they made, it was never theirs. The scars of cocoa and pitch still run deep in Trinidad's soil, and its history. She was born a princess, soft-spoken, poetic, a dreamer. But Noor Inayat Khan became one of the most dangerous women in Nazi-occupied France. The daughter of an Indian Sufi mystic and descendant of Tipu Sultan, she was raised on peace. But when World War II erupted, she chose war. Trained by the British Special Operations Executive, she became the first female wireless operator sent into occupied France. Her mission? Transmit vital intelligence while constantly on the run. The Gestapo was hunting her. Most agents survived 6 weeks, Noor lasted 3 months. She changed locations daily, carried a gun she refused to use, and sent coded messages under Nazi noses. Eventually betrayed, she was captured, tortured, and never spoke a word. No names, no codes, nothing. In 1944, at just 30 years old, she was executed at Dachau. Her final word? Liberté. Noor Inayat Khan, princess poet, spy, a silent storm who died for freedom. This boy was supposed to be king. Born into royalty in 1921, Seretse Khama was heir to the throne of Bechuanaland, now Botswana. Educated in South Africa and the UK, he was brilliant, charismatic, and black. Then he did something that shocked the world. He married a white woman. Ruth Williams, an English clerk, became his wife in 1948. Their love defied British colonial laws, and the brutal system of apartheid just across the border in South Africa. The backlash was immediate. His own government exiled him. Britain stripped him of his title. He lost his throne, not because he broke the law but because he broke tradition. But he didn't give up. Years later, Seretse returned, not just as a chief, but as the first president of an independent Botswana. He turned the nation into one of Africa's most stable democracies, all because he chose love and never backed down. Would you risk it all for love? Watch more true stories that history tried to erase. He was born into slavery, torn from his mother, forbidden to read and beaten for trying, but Frederick Douglass refused to be broken. He secretly taught himself to read and write, knowing that knowledge was power. He tried to escape more than once, and failed. But he never gave up. On September 3, 1838, disguised as a sailor, he boarded a train in Baltimore, making it to New York. But he didn't just run to freedom. He turned around and fought for others still in chains. Once free, he became a voice that thundered through America. His speeches exposed the cruelty of slavery. His words shook presidents. His autobiography sold thousands of copies, giving a face to the enslaved. He met with Lincoln, advised presidents, demanded justice for black Americans, both enslaved and free, and he never stopped using his pen and voice as weapons of truth. From slave to statesman, from bondage to the White House, Frederick Douglass didn't just escape, he became a legend. This man shot a U.S. Army officer point blank and walked free. His name was Plenty Horses, a Lakota Sioux who had just returned from years at the Carlisle Indian School, where native children were stripped of their language, culture, and identity. But when he came back to South Dakota, he returned to bloodshed. The Wounded Knee Massacre had just occurred. Hundreds of Lakota men, women, and children, unarmed, were gunned down by U.S. troops. Tensions were at a boiling point. And just days later, Plenty Horses approached Lieutenant Edward Casey and pulled the trigger. He was immediately arrested. The U.S. government wanted to make an example of him, charge him with murder. But then, something unexpected happened. His lawyers made a bold argument. If the U.S. was at war with the Lakota, then what Plenty Horses did wasn't murder. It was war. And the court agreed. In 1891, a jury acquitted him. Because convicting Plenty Horses would have meant admitting that the massacre at Wounded Knee wasn't just a tragedy, it was an act of war. Should he have been punished, or was justice served? Let us know in the comments. It's 1850. This girl was just 13 when her life was torn apart. Her family was traveling west when they were attacked by a Native American tribe. Most were killed. Olivia Oatman and her sister were spared, but only to be enslaved. She was dragged across the desert, starved and beaten. Her captors traded her like property, forcing her into servitude. Eventually she was sold to the Mojave people, who did something even more unexpected. They tattooed her chin with indigo ink, marking her as one of their own. She lived with them for 5 years, ate their food, spoke their language, wore their clothes, and when American authorities came to rescue her, she hesitated. The girl who had once been enslaved had become part of the tribe. When she finally returned to white society, people were obsessed. Her tattoo made her a living mystery. She gave public lectures, wrote a best-selling book, but she never spoke badly of the Mojave. To her dying day, no one really knew. Was she a prisoner, or had she become something more? She was the most wanted woman in Nazi-occupied Europe. Nancy Wake, born in 1912 in New Zealand, was living in France when World War II broke out. By 1943, she had joined the French resistance, smuggling supplies and people across borders, right under the Nazis' noses. They called her the White Mouse, because no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't catch her. The Gestapo put a 5 million franc bounty on her head. She didn't flinch. When her network was exposed, she escaped, hiking over the Pyrenees into Spain, alone, in winter. Later she parachuted back into France as a British Special Operations executive agent. There she led over 7,000 fighters in guerrilla warfare, sabotaging railways, blowing up bridges and taking down Nazis. She once killed a German sentry with her bare hands to prevent a mission from being compromised. After the war, she was awarded medals from the UK, US and France, but she didn't want fame, she wanted freedom. This boy was kidnapped and forced into a world completely unlike his own. In 1870, at just 11 years old, Herman Lehmann was taken by Apache warriors in Texas. Ripped from his German-American family, he would spend the next 9 years living as a Native American. First adopted by the Apaches, Herman was trained as a warrior, learning their language, customs, and survival skills. He took part in raids and battles, eventually becoming so assimilated he forgot his native tongue and identity. Later, he was captured by the Comanche and adopted again, this time by a chief who treated him like a son. When the U.S. Army found him at age 20, Herman no longer saw himself as white. Reuniting with his birth family was painful. He struggled to reconnect, caught between two worlds that both claimed him, yet neither truly felt like home. Would you have stayed with your new tribe, or gone back to the family you barely remembered? This man was born into slavery, forced to serve, forbidden to read, and owned like property. His name, Bass Reeves. But fate had something else in store. During the Civil War, he escaped into Indian Territory, learning languages, survival skills, and how to handle a rifle with deadly precision. When slavery ended, Bass didn't disappear into obscurity. He became a U.S. Deputy Marshal, one of the first black lawmen west of the Mississippi. He arrested over 3,000 criminals during his career, bringing in murderers, thieves, and gang leaders, many of them white, without ever being wounded in a gunfight. He rode with 2 Colt pistols on his hips, knew how to track a man for miles, and often used disguises to outsmart his targets. Despite the danger, Bass never backed down. He even had to arrest his own son for murder, and did it with the same iron will. A lawman feared by outlaws, respected by all, and the inspiration behind the legend of the Lone Ranger. This couple didn't just escape slavery, they outsmarted an entire system built to keep them captive. William and Ellen Craft were married, but enslaved. Ellen was light-skinned enough to pass as white, so they came up with a plan so bold it sounded impossible. She disguised herself as a sick, wealthy white man, arm in a sling, face wrapped in bandages. William played the role of her attentive slave. In December 1848, they boarded trains, stayed in hotels, and traveled openly through the South, riding straight past danger. Every mile was a risk. One wrong word, one curious glance, and they'd be torn apart. But they stayed in character and kept moving. After 4 tense days, they reached Philadelphia, free. But their story didn't end there. They became outspoken abolitionists, fighting to end the system that once tried to own them. William and Ellen Craft didn't just run, they performed their freedom and won. Which story did you connect with the most? Let us know in the comments.